Right. Senator Siewert.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I present the report of the Community Affairs References Committee on Inequality, Bridging Our Growing Divide, Inequality in Australia report, together with the Hansard record of proceedings and documents presented to the committee, and move that the report be printed.
Is that motion agreed? Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Are there... Sorry, Senator Siewert.
I move that the Senate take note of the report.
Thank you.
So
Senator Siewert.
In doing so, I would first off like to thank all the witnesses and people that provided submissions to the inquiry, and thank the Secretariat of the committee for the hard work they put into presenting this inquiry and to helping us pull the report together. Unfortunately, I presented a report that isn't a consensus report. I've presented a majority report from the Australian Greens and the Australian Labor Party, and the Coalition, as part of that report, have a dissenting report, which I'm sure Senator Gizelja will speak to. I, as Chair, have also made some additional comments on the behalf of the Australian Greens, which I'll come to shortly. But first off, what I would like to do is outline the report and the key findings of the report. We had 64 submissions that presented very valuable evidence to this committee, and we also took evidence from around Australia and held hearings around Australia that again presented us with a lot of evidence, and we also made sure that we went to some of those areas with high rates of unemployment that have been identified as priority areas for some of the employment programs the government is introducing. The evidence before the committee showed that income inequality in this country has increased since the mid-80s. The evidence also showed that the likely impact of the budget measures will exacerbate income inequality and poverty in Australia, and that the Henderson poverty line and the 50% medium income poverty line indicate that there are far too many vulnerable Australians, individuals and families in receipt of income support who are currently living in poverty. The evidence also provided to the committee shows that the level of New Start payment is too low. The income of a single adult New Start recipient is now more than $100 below both the Henderson poverty line and the 50% of median income poverty line. We also made findings on the importance of the minimum wage, and that it remains an important mechanism for low-income people to avoid poverty and participate in society. The evidence shows that the minimum wage makes a significant difference to income inequality and rates of poverty, and it is important that the minimum wage is set at a level that reflects the rising cost of living in Australia. There is a socio-economic gradient associated with a large range of health outcomes. Poor health outcomes are recorded for those with low incomes, and a concerted focused on preventative health and improved access to primary health care, especially for lower income people, will assist in lifting a number of these measures. We also looked at people who are in what we saw as particular groups of disadvantage, such as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, people with disability, people living with a mental illness, single parents and newly arrived migrants, who are more vulnerable to poverty and disadvantage. We also found that lower transfer payments or a low income often compounds the extent of disadvantage felt by those people in those particular groups. We also looked at the impact of not being able to access employment or gain employment, but also, and that obviously has very significant impacts, but we also received evidence and looked at the issues around insecure, casual, temporary, part-time, short-term contracts, and what impact that has on entrenching people on low incomes and entrenching people subjecting those groups to, so that they become subject to income inequality. And we also looked at issues such as such as the impact that affordable housing has and stable housing has on people's prospects and life outcomes and inequality. We also looked at the mobility of labour and, as I said, decent and secure and stable housing. We also looked at what could work for people. In terms of helping people to access employment, it's very clear that a lot of evidence talked about the need to be able to access stable employment and the impact that employment has on people's income status and on inequality. The committee made 13 recommendations around issues such as ensuring that, for example, the budget does an analysis of its impact on there's analysis of the budget on the impact on income inequality. We also make a recommendation that the budget measures that impact on people on people's and their income in terms of their income support payments and other measures not proceed. Those budget measures, for example, include moving young people off income support for 6 months, the changes to indexing parenting payments single, the changes to indexing on pension payments. We also looked at the impact of inequality on older Australians. We made a number of other recommendations around the changes to the GP co-payment not proceeding and changes to higher education not proceeding. We also, the broad committee made a recommendation, or so the majority committee I should say, the majority report makes a recommendation that the Australian government review the level of working age payments to examine the rate of payment to the poverty line. And I must say, while I agree with that recommendation, it's where the Australian Greens has submitted additional comments, because we very clearly consider that New Start allowances and youth allowances need to be increased. The evidence received over that point was absolutely overwhelming because of the impact that the low rate of New Start and youth allowance has on people's in terms of the impact on poverty, their impact and then therefore to be able to access other opportunities, and in fact impacts on their ability to gain employment. The points that were made, and I know my colleagues on the Senate committee who will address this report shortly will bring out some more of these points, because I will run out of time to do justice to all the issues that we considered. One of the really key points I'd like to highlight is that not only is it clear that income inequality has increased, but that people assume that if we do better in this country, we've heard this expression a lot, rises all the boats with the rising tide. In fact, the evidence we received does not indicate that. And it's very clear from, for example, a report that was released during our inquiry by the Bankwest Curtin Economics Centre, where they showed that, in fact, that the income inequality in my home state of Western Australia has risen, and it has risen more than anywhere else in the country, and that's directly, they relate that to the mining boom. In fact, they've done 2 reports on impact that were really relevant to this inquiry, one on the boom, the impact of the boom in Western Australia, and one on income inequality, and used the medium line of 30% of poverty, the medium line of poverty using 30%. The point they make really clearly is that benefits of the boom have not been shared across all the quintiles, and that those in the lowest quintiles have not received the benefits of the boom, and in fact that income inequality has increased in Western Australia, connected directly to the mining boom. Those are the sorts of issues that need to be addressed. We make a number of recommendations, as I said, 13, that look at these issues, look at how we address housing, how we address education, how we improve the support for those unemployed people on working age payments, how we provide case management support for those people. The individualised approach is by far the best. The evidence is overwhelming there. Also make recommendations around needing to look at a taxation system, and when the government does its white paper on taxation reform, need to be looking at what impact that has on inequality, because also from the evidence it's clear that government's policies and taxation has a direct impact, or can have a direct impact, on income inequality. But the bottom line here is that income inequality has significant negative effects, and that it actually helps our economy if we reduce income inequality. I commend the report to the Senate and urge senators and the broader community to read the report.
Thank you, Senator Siewert.